Actually, it tells me when we're recording.
Call recording is on.
Okay. So once again, it's Rob Hirschfeld and Victor. We're spinning an ISO, the latest Crowbar 2 ISO to show off the progress on it. In this case, we're using automation and dev tool in the smoke test framework that automatically sets up KVM admin server, and then it'll bring up 4 or 5 nodes under that.
4 nodes.
4 nodes, and
5
so
nodes total.
we are just letting the base OS install go in the background. While we're watching that progress, and until we have a website up and can talk about what's going on, we'll give a little update on where things stand as of the last sprint. So Crowbar 2 framework is effectively in a position where we can boot and discover nodes. We register, we do the discovery on those nodes. We bootstrap Crowbar itself using Crowbar. So Crowbar comes up empty and without any operating infrastructure except its database and website. And from there, it will install all of the roles, base network configs for the network, for the admin, chef server. Basically, it actually goes through a bootstrap process. There's a wizard mode, I think, that we didn't use here.
Yeah, it won't be used here.
The wizard mode will actually let you make some of these choices that the scripts automatically do. So you can choose your admin network, you can choose DHCP, your NTP route, your domain, things like that. You can adjust or tweak your DNS, your name servers. We're not trying to demo that stuff right here. We're trying to demonstrate the boot environment. But once Crowbar's installed itself and all its infrastructure components, then it will have DHCP and Pixie that can then deliver.
Mind if I check something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you undo that virtual lib bridging stuff?
I don't think I did. Okay. There's also a direct SSH session if you'd rather type directly to SSH.
Yeah, it's up, so that'll cause it to crash. Well, it won't cause it to crash, it'll just pause.
Yeah, so you can. You have to do that each time? That's how you reboot it. Sorry, working through the new environment.
Okay.
So what will happen now is when a new node is booted,
There we go.
DHCP services will go ahead and give the machine Sledgehammer. Sledgehammer works differently now than it used to. We've kept control.sh, and Sledgehammer itself is the same, but the control.sh file that gets sent is different. And in this case, what it does is it uses the Crowbar APIs. And Victor's written some great documentation, so I'm repeating this. It uses the Crowbar APIs to create a node, and then once it has a node, the control.sh also adds in the SSH keys. Crowbar has the ability to SSH installs the chef client using the script jig, which is effectively an SSH client. Once it's done that, then it can use chef to do the rest of the configuration and setup, which it does. We'll actually show it walking through the node roles, and we'll be able to see that process.
Yeah, and you'll be able to bring up the website here in a sec.
Yeah.
It's bootstrapping the Rails stuff and running its initial migrations.
Oh, whoops, wrong thing. There's my web server. And so what happens is after the Sledgehammer comes in and installs itself, it's going to run through the additional node roles that are necessary to finish configuring the base system. So there's some really interesting things that Crowbar 2 does that are different. One is it has specific clients for the services that are on that node role, and it also has this event trigger action which brings up the database node roles or database type node role, And in that case, what it's doing is actually adding registries into DNS and DHCP and taking care of the server-side cleanup. So one of the things that we discovered in the last couple weeks to drive the interactions for Crowbar 2 are that we actually have to be able to take actions, basically synchronous actions at times, against existing services. And that allows us to do things like update a DNS database or a DHCP, create DHCP entries for systems. And those, because they're required to act, are blocking roles. And what happens under there, it's not exactly events, it's really, they're events from a code perspective, but they're not asynchronous events. The asynchronous engine for Crowbar is the node role infrastructure. So when we need long-running tasks, we do those with node roles because those have their own state machines. When we just need to add something to a database and that has to happen synchronously before other things happen, we do that using the Crowbar event infrastructure, which effectively allows you to manage your, the best word is side effects, although I don't consider them side effects because they're intentional, but they're immediate consequences of node role activity. And once Sledgehammer's up and it's installed, then the update for this week is that there's a new role that allows you to install the operating system and bring up the operating system on that and then boot that all the way through the next phase.
Yeah.
So that's a, oh, okay, so here's systems up.
Yeah, it hasn't created the admin network or the initial admin node yet, but once these migrations are finished, it will.
So when we go to but we can watch them in the Bootstrap screen, even though we're not going to click any buttons. It's just slow. Yeah. So in the Bootstraps, we have an automatic install going right now, so it's going to take care of this. But in the bootstrapping screen, you'd actually be able to, if you installed with the wizard option, you'd be able to use this screen, and this screen comes through, and you can actually see the configuration choices that you're going to make, if you need to make changes to what these things are. Right now, they're pretty primitive overlays for this, and in a minute, it's actually going to create the admin network for us. We're watching this scroll on the right. On the left. Cool.
Yeah, now it just bounced the web server, so this won't, once it finishes. Well, wait until it
Wait until it
that
finishes.
Yeah.
I'm impatient. One of the things that's
Now
different
the web server is restarted.
between Victor and I is that I've been using the simulator to an extent to start these things, which you can use to run the UI pretty effectively, but it obviously doesn't do the system bootstrap, although we're simulating just about everything. So this is the annealer view. This is meant as sort of a working view where you can see the queue of items that are going on in the backlog. We've got a couple other views that we're sort of trying to converge. So there's also a snapshot view. I'm going to jump over to it even though it's not as interesting right now. So this view lets you see the node role table, really, and all the interactions that's going on. We're talking about making some changes to this based on how we're dealing with workflows of configuring actual systems, right? Everything in here is automatic. If we jump up to the deployment level, we have this very confusing screen where you can assign roles. You'll watch us do that as part of this demo. This screen we're going to converge into the snapshot screen so that it becomes more obvious what things are going. And then another change that Victor suggested that I like is we're going to make snapshots much less visible in the system, and you're really going to be dealing with deployments. And so the idea of snapshots being distinct is it will be more of a deployment history than a thing in itself. We think that'll simplify things because we're finding people are getting a little bit confused because Victor and I jump between these different screens because they each have different utility, and we're working on improving the workflows. So. And so what you're seeing right here is effectively the deployment progressing over time. So we've now installed the Chef server. That's why those lights are green. We're now doing work for the deployer. It's going to be bringing up these changes. I'm going to make the screen a little bigger. Back, if I can do the right thing. Too big. And so there's a couple ways to visualize this. One of the, if we go back to the annealer, oops, if I can click it. Thought I fixed that. There we go. So the annealer is basically the same queue. I think we've been finishing items, so the next item that's in process is going to show in here, and then once that completes, then the blocked items will be moved into to do, and as the queuing system pulls those up, they'll move into transition. Right now there's a queue of 10 items, or we have 10 worker threads, so we only can do 10 items at once.
Well, it's one item per node at a time and up to 10 nodes in parallel.
Thank you.
That's how it works out.
So there's optimizations that allow you to parallel task, but we single thread at a node because of the dependency confusion. So it's continuing to work through. There's another view in here called System Overview, which is this is a preliminary view here where we're still trying to add some things out, but the idea is that we actually categorize different roles into different architecture levels, and you could actually watch a large-scale deployment progress through the deployment. So let's see. Go back to deployments. So in this case, we've got all of this node is up, and now our script is going to continue working its way through the background. Well, it looks like it stopped.
Oh, no, that's because we were looking at the screen
Oh.
session for the admin node install.
Got it. So
Now if we jump over here, in 30 seconds it will boot 4 client nodes. That'll then boot into Sledgehammer and start their discovery process.
So at this point, we are now equivalent to where we were in a Crowbar 1 setup complete. The big difference being that we could have changed all the configuration values before they were executed. So
And this went a lot faster than Crowbar 1 does.
that's true. So at this point, the admin server is ready and alive. All of the base services are set up. And as soon as the system starts booting other nodes, which we'll see in a minute, yeah, there we go. So you can see it started 4 virtual machines over on the left here. We can just watch a couple of them. I really like to make this poor hardware sweat.
Yeah, this will be a little bit because unfortunately Linux bridging and where we're doing networking isn't the fastest in the world.
So we're effectively pixie booting 4 machines in parallel. We are working with the Docker team. I'm actually trying to make this step effectively work in Linux containers with the Docker team, and that would eliminate the Sledgehammer step in this process. So I want to develop workloads like Ceph or OpenStack or Hadoop. In a test cycle, you'd be able to eliminate this part of the test, or this cycle. You'd be able to jump straight to install into workloads. That'll probably be something that emerges over during the hack, because one of the Docker people is going to join us for the Crowbar hack in Hong Kong.
I wonder if any of the Core OS people will be. Do you know if any of the Core OS guys will be in Hong Kong?
I suspect they will.
They'd be
That
some
would be
interesting
fun.
people to talk to. I'd love to have Crowbar deploy Core OS stuff.
So another item for the hack that we're looking at trying to accomplish is getting multi-OS going for Crowbar. So we've been working on the Ubuntu piece by default right now, because that's key for us, just achieving our base demonstration of functionality for our milestone Crowbar 2. The next thing we're working on, John Terpster is actively working on OpenSUSE 13.1 as the next OS to bring up, and he has a series of pull floods coming along that line, and then I think the Fedora, there's some action towards Fedora as another OS behind that. So this is all things that we're trying to line up for demonstration at the Crowbar hack. And this system itself will be part of the server resources that we'll have, so we can run test builds pretty quickly, demonstrate capability during the hack, and spin things up, just like we're doing right now. So now what you've seen is the big advance from last sprint, which is Sledgehammer actually found and deployed these nodes, and then what's happened is that Crowbar from the admin server is SSHing into the nodes. Once the
It won't.
you want to describe it?
It's not quite SSHing into it yet. If we go back just to the base screen, we can see that some of the nodes are still marked as off. They won't mark themselves as on until we can actually SSH into them and let Crowbar do its thing.
So this is a huge point for Crowbar 2 that's different and much better. In order for us to orchestrate these nodes, we had to know when they were on and available for management. And so Crowbar 2 detects state. We don't use Nagios or anything. It's sort of brute force. But we know if the machines are on or off, because if they're off, we can't control them.
If you can ping them and SSH into them as root and run bin true, then they're on. Otherwise, they're off from Crowbar's point of view.
And
Which
this
is a little ghetto, but it works for now.
And this means that in our Sledgehammer cycles, that's what we're using to actually start driving the orchestration. And it's one of the reasons why, for the first time, we can actually determine the real state of the systems during orchestration. So if we come back to the this one, if we come back to this view, you can actually see that we've been installing these roles, and you can actually see in node by node the actual state of everything that Crowbar is doing on those nodes, down to the actual service that's getting installed. So this view ends up being incredibly powerful to watch the active infrastructure being deployed. And this is a real 4-node infrastructure. It's just about done being provisioned.
Yep. And then once it's provisioned, you can create a new deployment and start throwing an operating system on it.
All right, you want to demonstrate that?
Sure. Yeah. For reasons to make sure that discovery of new nodes always happens, you can't modify the system deployment through the UI. So we'll just create a new one called.
Right. So there's a strict rule that you can't, right? That system deployment is verboten, and the other deployments are actually children of system. And so you have to choose to put nodes into a deployment before you can take action on it, which is what Victor's going through right now and doing. So the bulk edit screen came back for that. And then once you have that deployment, you choose what, and we're working to improve this workflow. You choose which.
This workflow is still ugly.
It was blind. It isn't a blind. The new workflow is going to actually use the snapshot screen, and it's going to be much clearer what activity you're supposed to do.
And you can do all of this through you can do this all programmatically through the API. One of our slightly longer term goals is to implement something like heat templates, so you can actually templatize setting up deployments.
And actually, the UI uses the API. To be fair,
Yeah.
it's actually API calls behind the scenes.
Yeah. The problem is the core is stupid and it needs to be driven by something. Right now, that's a human via the API or the UI, and we eventually want to make so that you can drive it in a scripted or a templated fashion. So what we see right now is we've got our new Ubuntu deployment, and it's in proposed state because we've been making changes to it. The annealer won't mess with any nodes, or won't mess with any node roles that are in a proposed snapshot. So right now we've got these 4 nodes queued up to have the operating system installed, and right now that operating system, it doesn't show me that here. Right now that operating system is just going to be Ubuntu, but that is something that is
We haven't done
changeable.
the overlays yet.
We haven't done the overlays for deployment roles.
So that's part of it.
And when we commit this, it's already the moment we committed it, it noticed that there were changes, and so it's going through and setting up all the stuff that it needs on the
Right. So
there. And now these nodes will reboot in 60 seconds.
So this view is actually the same one as we showed with all the roles on it. It's
And you
just
can see that
filtered by deployment.
the admin node, the provisioner DHCP database, which is a node role that controls the database that all the DHCP servers use, is actually in transition because it's updating it and bouncing the DHCP services so that, or actually just reloading the DHCP services with the new config information, which will tell it to boot to the operating system installer of our choice for the nodes.
Cool.
And once that is finished transitioning,
Should be able to, before you leave that screen, one of the other things that just came in was the attributes. So
yes.
we actually are listing out all of the different attributes. OHI discovers a huge amount of data. We just mapped this subset for now. And then you can we probably won't keep these viewable from here, but
and now we get to see if my 60-second timeout was long enough for something besides my laptop.
laptops have almost
Yeah.
almost as beefy.
Well, and there is a, last week I sent out a list of things that need to happen for the .0 release of Crowbar 2, and one of those is replacing just this stupid 60-second timeout with an actual callback infrastructure that will allow us to know when a node's boot state has changed.
Oh, I see one of the ones in the background is already there.
Okay, yeah, so it's finished, so they'll all boot into Ubuntu. Why hasn't this guy rebooted yet?
Huh.
Oh, we'll find out in a minute. And one of the peculiarities so that the jig doesn't touch these nodes right now is they're all marked as off while the operating system is installing, because we effectively, we've set up everything that we need to get our base OS on it, but we don't actually control the installation process. We just set up all the config files we need and tell it to go.
On off is a little bit.
It's a bit of a misnomer right now.
Yep. I'm watching Chris's ping to me. So on off is a little bit of a misnomer, and just in that the system could be on but not.
Yeah, but
Crowbar
alive and
addressable.
not alive is
Yeah.
a little bit too much to cram in there.
Zombie. Right, but so on off seemed like it was straightforward enough. Huh. Looks like one of the guys unhappy.
It's just
Cool. Questions while we watch this? Well, this is pretty much the end of the demo. Are we talking to a live mic?
oh, we're not muted.
No, I'm here. I've been
Okay.
watching you. You're live.
Okay.
We've just been monologuing for a
Yeah,
while.
I feel
so
like we're click and clack. We're gonna start telling bad jokes.
we do that anyways.
Oh, did it kick in?
Hmm?
It kicked in?
Yep.
Okay. This is always the watching paint dry section where I lust for the Docker work to not have to wait.
Just remember that watched paint, when it finally dries, is much nicer to look at.
And one of the things that we got some feedback from somebody who was looking at the system clean was that they were confused about sort of the munge together of status information where it's off, available, and to do. I don't
Okay.
Don't
and
know if
now
we
we
wanna
have
change
nodes
that or not,
that are
but-
booting to their hard drives. And see, we've got another node that has marked itself as on and is going through its.
I'm going to show the all Oh, okay.
And
Those
it's-
are in process.
Yep, and it's
actions,
going
so-
through its all of the node roles that we had in Sledgehammer. They are equally as applicable to nodes that are in their operating system, and so it's going back through and setting it all up, making sure that the networks get configured correctly. It knows where its DNS server is, all that fun stuff.
And so one of the things to note in this is that the in-process actions show you exactly, if that node is not on and available, you're going to have a list of in-process actions explaining exactly what's going to come on that node and what's in. If there's an error, you'll get to see what error is. You can click on it and see the logs right from the UI.
Just an example. So that deploy client run is finished, and we've got all of the output of the chef run.
So if you're troubleshooting a deployment and there's and you added information to the logs, even if it was successful, you're still going to be able to come and check out and see what happened with the system, what the log data was for every node role, successful or not. So it was really important to us, and we keep making sure this shows up in the UI, to have Crowbar very discrete and transparent in its actions, right? You can see each thing it does, you can get logs from each thing that it does, and there's no magic go do stuff buttons anymore. It's all very discrete. You can actually watch the brains work.
All right, we're down to that last system that didn't reboot for some reason, which I can't debug right now because we're running a demo.
Fair enough.
Unless someone really wants to watch me grovel
And
through
then,
log
if we hit
files.
Control C, if I hit Control C on the other end, it's going to tear this whole infrastructure down and be ready to do it again. And for the record, that took 30 minutes to do a full phase install. Pretty good. Very excited about that. More questions? Okay.
Very cool.
I think we've hit just about every UI screen except some of the network pieces. As we build up deployments, we'll actually start having people build or having the system build networks for you. Let's go to the jigs screen for a second. Utilities jigs, I think. Oh no, I'm thinking roles, but okay. So these are the script jig. The networks are actually attached to the no-op jig. No-op jig is used for things that Crowbar has to do to build database entries and track things, but don't have external action. And all the networking pieces are some of them. Excuse me. Some of the networking pieces are internal database actions, and
You
they're
go to the no-op
no-ops.
jig, the only one that's there is the network server, which exists to hold the bus maps.
Right.
For when we're building out conduits.
The other ones are actually created dynamically. So if you're running the test infrastructure, it binds the network roles to the test jig, which is used by the simulator. If you are running in a real system, it binds the network roles to the script jig, where there's code that implements the script action.
Yeah. And one other thing is, like on the admin network, we have a new field here called Ipv6 Prefix. And that prefix is a globally unique private IP for this a globally unique private IPv6 prefix for this cluster. There's a specific RFC that governs what IPv6 uses to replace the 10. The 172. And the 192.168. networks, with the added advantage that collisions in the prefixes that you use are pretty rare because it's essentially a 48-bit random number. Which, as long as you don't go crazy with generating them, the odds of a collision are going to be pretty rare in practice.
About the same as the odds of a collision of meteor and the Earth. Big meteor.
Well, I mean, the private space is bigger than the entire IPv4 space. By several orders.
That gives you 15 years.
Yeah, by about 8 orders of magnitude.
So this is
It won't be enough. Someone will use it all.
Yes, but they'll have to work at it.
one of the things that we are often asked and is worth pointing out is that there is no network JSON file in Crowbar 2. The network JSON file was drawn and quartered, and the quarters are actually things that show up on the screens. We kept the quarters. But the configuration that we're looking at is actually part of information feed that used to be in the network JSON file is now managed on a per network basis and dynamically
And you can
controlled.
create and tear down networks more or less on the fly. And like, if we wanted to add another range to the admin network, we could just go in and do it right here.
Say it isn't so.
Yes.
Wow.
Changing the conduits on the fly, I wouldn't recommend.
Are you demonstrating that at the moment?
No. One
No.
of the things that is
Why not?
that is a challenge is that it's relatively straightforward to create things. It's moderately straightforward to delete things. It's incredibly complex to change them.
To tear them, well, to change them in a controlled fashion whenever a bunch of other stuff already relies on that.
So what we're really focused on right now is creation, and we're starting to deal with some destruction because of this. We're starting to do these provisioning actions where people have to make decisions, and so destruction ends up. People don't make decisions perfectly, so we end up needing some destruction.
But what I really wanted to demonstrate here was that Crowbar is IPv6 enabled, and it will use IPv6 by preference on the admin network for everything, where it doesn't have to use IPv4.
So if it
Which basically-
SSH to the box, it uses IPv6.
Preferentially, yeah.
If it pings it, uses
Exact.
IPv6.
Yes.
If it pixie boots,
Yes. Part of the aliveness checking is it tries to ping using IPv6 and IPv4, and it will return whichever one. It will try to use the address that returns the ping first when it's in a situation where it needs to do aliveness checking.
So how can I check to see what IP addresses are allocated? I know
There's no real way to show
There is.
allocation
it's just not wired in the menu.
in here.
Uh-huh.
For IPv6, we don't allocate IP addresses, and we don't store them in a database by default. You can create a range that does IPv6, but by default, we just generate the IPv6 address for a node based off of the last 64 bits of the FQDN of the node run through MD5 sum.
It's consistent.
Yeah. Which the odds of that colliding, good luck.
Lost my pull down menu goes.
Since we have 64 bits of space to play in, and we're using a more or less cryptographically semi-secure hash, I don't worry about collisions.
My PNC is unhappy. Go ahead.
Can we,
You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, where are we with, Vince, do you happen to know where we are with the pull requests from your UI designer?
Good question.
If you're still there?
Sorry, what was that?
Where do you happen to know where we are with the pull request for the UI?
Was he there?
Vince, are you? I just heard you, right?
Yeah, I'm just not sure which pull referring to.
The last
Dennis, I think.
last week he had is it Dennis? Dennis, maybe. Who is the person that is responsible for the UI?
He said he'd done a whole bunch of work.
Well, that was done by Ken and James.
Ken,
But
sorry.
that was a while ago.
Right, and they had said last week on the call, they said that they had a set of pull requests they wanted to submit to improve the UI, move it over to
Okay.
Bootstrap, that kind of thing.
I believe that that's the plan, yes.
Do you know where we are with that?
I'm
or-
just, I have no idea what's the current status on that, because the work we had was on Crowbar 2 from like last May or
Right.
June.
Okay, so I'll just check on. I'll just ask on the list then. The person is called Ken.
Yeah,
You said.
Yeah, well, so now it's going to be Ken and Thomas, and I don't know if Ken is on the mailing list, but definitely is. So just ask on the mailing list.
Okay, cool. I'll do that. No worries.
I checked around internally, and the Bootstrap framework is actually greeted with some enthusiasm from the Dell UI team. They're actually building UIs in Bootstrap also, and so there's some excitement to see that come in.
Okay.
Other items prep for the summit? The Hong Kong hack, sorry.
Right. Well.
Oh, we ought to, it's worth mentioning that a little bit. We should talk through the Havana state, if it's worth
Well, does
noting.
anybody know?
It actually, there's been a ton of pull requests. It's looking pretty good and stable from as far as I can tell. Arkady said he was going to send out a status update. The only thing that was pending, I think, was some dashboard work. And I think that dashboard work is going to come in. There was a change that needed some additional network routes added. Those should be coming in. So it looks like we're on track to have a Havana deployable Havana set on the Roxy branch during the hack, and then be able to demo it the day before the summit. And I'm expecting that we'll produce ISOs and upload them to SourceForge with those bits after we've verified them during the hack. But the hack's main focus is Crowbar 2, not Crowbar 1. Those are activities that are running in parallel.
Okay. Okay, cool. I guess with that, we'll close it out. If there's any other, issues, obviously mailing list is always open. Thank you very much for showing up, gentlemen. And I guess some of you will see each other at the Hong Kong Summit next. Right? Yes.
All recording is off.
See ya.